Hello, everyone. Welcome back to a special episode of the Texans Probe today. Today, as y'all can see, we're on with Stressans, also known as Garrett. How
The
you doing
goat.
today?
I'm doing great, man. Appreciate you guys. I appreciate the invite, and as you know, I got you guys set up with the live here on Restream, so this is a new feature. I'm excited to dive into it, man.
There we go.
Yep, definitely exciting. We've been stuck on these Google Meets and Zooms the last 3 months, 4 months, and I guess we were just missing out here. We were missing
Got
out.
me stressing, bro.
We were missing out on the tips here for the streaming, but um, yeah, today's going to be an exciting one. We're going to kind of review some Nick Caley film, obviously some Rams, and we can also go into, I know Stresson's big thing for us during this offseason was just talking about how the Texans had to run more gap. We talked about this for months on end, pretty much. Um, and, both of the teams that Caley has coached for and, Popovich, who's come in as the offensive line coach, they ran a lot of gap. So you can expect that coming in, and we can kind of talk about that. You can look at the carries from guys like Kyron Williams last year and then Damian Harris back when they were in New England. But, there's a lot to be excited about here. We did our episode with Nico last week about the Caley hire, and then today we're going to kind of go into some of the film, I think. So, yeah, I think this will be an exciting one for sure.
Yeah, I mean the thing about Nick Caley and the new changes this offseason is always going to be about in the offensive line and what it's going to look like up front. It's going to have to look different. I mean, we all remember the Tennessee Titans game where they're running wide zone and the Titans linebackers are literally just going backside. It was as simple as that, and it was just kind of embarrassing that an NFL team exposed another NFL team that badly. But there's no way that's going to happen next season, right? It wouldn't make any sense. What's going to change is going to be probably in the less wide zone or gap, like Jacob's saying. Some guys in the offensive line simply might not be here. We talked about Shaq Mason. We talked about Juice Scruggs, Kenyon Green. Do we even need to mention? And other changes there might happen. So we'll see about that. And then also, I think that really, in general, it's just going to be a more creative scheme. We're talking gap, but at the same time, it's also going to be motion, play action off of those gap schemes and stuff. It's going to be a nice creative offense. We think. We don't know. We think because Nick Caley has not been a play caller before, but we think because of his experience in New England with McDaniels and Popovich being there too with McDaniels and Caley, and then Caley being the passing game coordinator, which is a pretty good title to have, I would say. He has experience in the McVay passing game, which I love the passing game that the Rams have, but also just being in the building with McVay, you would have to think that it would lead to good results for him as a play caller.
Yeah, and I got a couple things too before we dive in. Like, I'll admit, like my big two criteria going into like the OC search hire was, I think it was a bit of overreaction to Bobby Slowick. It was experience and going with the Shanahan scheme. So I will say that I don't feel nearly as bad as I do now about those. I think that it boils. The simplest thing for me is, do you trust in Nick Caserio and D'Amico Ryans to address those concerns? And I do. I don't think that they would have hired Nick Caley if those two things would have still been question marks for him. And to y'all's credit, like I know we had some dialogue, surface level. I didn't really dive deep into it. I felt like it was going to be something similar to the Shanahan scheme, and it scared me. But the more I talked with y'all and the more I dug in myself, I did realize that the McVay, variation of the scheme, if that is what we get with Caley, is in fact different. Like the fact that y'all mentioned motion, not only motion, but motion at the snap. I think they motioned like 80+% when we were around 60%.
Yeah.
11 personnel is another thing too. I thought that we ran a lot of 11 personnel, which is around 60 and again around 80% for Nick Caley's offense. So, they basically spread the field, which is what I wanted with 11 personnel to run the ball. And then the biggest thing for me that Caley has shown, at least McVay has shown, his descendants, Kevin O'Connell in Minnesota, Zach Robinson in Atlanta, is their ability to adapt to their personnel, which is what y'all are alluding to with the gap run. That was my biggest thing with Slowick. I felt that's the reason why he got fired, is he had this Shanahan scheme, and it fit a certain type of personnel, the personnel we did not have, and he was too rigid to be able to adjust. So that's kind of my thoughts on it. I'm excited to dive in. I know, Jacob, we've talked about, I got the book right here. This is the Bobby Peters.
I forget where mine is, but
Jacob's mom is very happy that
today,
Jacob
so
is reading.
my backpack. Here, I can.
Yeah. You got to get the right material, but I've only read a couple pages. I actually bought the one last year for Slowick, and I barely read any of it, but I think I might have to burn that one. So
There we go. I got mine as well.
There you go.
Yeah, but there was, and one of the things that, Texans obviously struggled with, the Rams were kind of the total opposite, was they were good against teams that blitzed a lot. You saw Minnesota. They beat Minnesota twice in the playoffs, and Mr. Optimistic, man. You're my guy. Well, come on.
Mr. Optimistic. He's trolling, baby.
And I understand why he says that. Like, yes, like obviously, Popovich and Caley were in New England, but at the end of the day, what they do, or even what McDaniels did, was a multiple offense. What McVay did, in my opinion, was a multiple offense that, like we said, is about attacking the defense, not just running the same stuff over and over again. It's about matchup-based offense. At the end of the day, it has nothing to do with
adapting.
It's everything to do with adapting, not a certain team that you are or scheme that you come from. And this is completely different from just being I hate to hate on Slowick, but again, like it's so much more than just coming from working under Kyle Shanahan for a couple of years.
Yeah, and I think
Absolutely.
the argument to say that it will be more like the Rams and it will be the Patriots is the most recent examples. LaFleur, KOC, Zach Robinson, you watch what they did when they went somewhere, it was where they were last. And it's really for almost any OC. Typically, when they go to a new team, they run what they most recently ran, most similar to that. So, I mean, that's the argument. We don't know, but yes, we could get into some. Hopefully, we'll do mostly Rams film today and then do another one with some Patriots stuff as well.
For sure, yeah. I got to find a way to get like 2021 Patriots film because NFL Pro only goes to 2022. I was trying to find it, but I did watch some Raiders because Josh McDaniels was there. But I think you can also throw out the fact that I think people kind of have this idea about Patriots, offensive guys. They've had good coordinators. They just have not had good head coaches. Like Josh McDaniels is a very good offensive coordinator, and Bill O'Brien was a good offensive coordinator. They've had coordinators that were good. They just, like, McDaniels has never worked out as a head coach, but he keeps going back to New England because every time he goes to New England, they have a successful offense. 2021, they were top 10 in almost every statistic with Mac Jones at quarterback, and they had Damian Harris as their top running back and Jacoby Myers as their receiver one. That offense was not talented, but they exceeded expectations. Right. And Mac Jones, I think Mac Jones he played in the Pro Bowl that season.
Yeah, all because they maximized their personnel and attacked the defense with the weaknesses that the defense has. I mean, that's complementary football.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have one more point too that I thought of, and it's kind of off the beaten path, but like a big concern with hiring a defensive-minded head coach in DeMeco Ryans is having to find that OC and constantly replace them. Absolutely. But you look at the Patriots, that's what Bill Belichick did and made a dynasty out of it. So it is possible to find replenish OCs over the years. So
yeah, and that's that was one thing that Drew, we talked about last episode with Nico was the idea that you're able to keep Gerard Johnson, who has worked with KOC before, in a similar scheme.
That's simple.
And, he can learn even more. And I think Gerard Johnson's a very good coach. I think there was better coordinator options in this cycle. And we talked about this. I don't think he was the best choice, but I think he's a very smart coach. And I think he's going to be a coordinator and probably a head coach at some point in the NFL. Yeah. So to keep him in the building for if Caley does leave. And we also talked about the fact that Nick Caley's not necessarily a guy that's going to take the first job that's offered to him. Even in this coordinator cycle, he turned down 2 jobs, and he turned down a Patriots job that would have made him the highest paid coordinator in the NFL.
Very good.
He's not going to just go because they offer him a lot of money. He's going to want to go for a good job, which is smart. You like hearing that from a guy, very smart human being at least. Yeah. But he's not going to go to a place like Jacksonville. He's not going to go to a place like one of these teams.
That's what Ben Johnson did too, right? I mean, he held out for 2 or 3 years, wait for the right.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. And that's another point that I think we talked about last episode, where you wanted to look at tight ends coaches around the NFL. They ain't doing too bad. There's a lot of good tight ends coaches around the NFL. And
I remember hearing Nick Caley's name probably since 2022.
He's been around.
He is a very individual. The people were talking about in future, like in articles about future head coaches. I even saw his name in there from pretty well-known writers. So this is a guy.
Yeah, and that, with Beltway's point, that is partly true, but I think it's also kind of ignorant to ignore the year that they had with Mac Jones. And
Yeah,
year
we're
that they
talking
had
about the
with
Mac
Cam Newton.
Jones.
It's even in the year with
Simple
Cam
as
Newton,
that.
if you want to talk about Cole Popovich was the co-offensive line coach that season, they had a top 5 run game. They've been able to run the ball very efficiently, and Cam was just not very good. And then they get Mac Jones. They won 10 games, or 10 or 11, I think, with the top 10 offense. So these guys have been good coordinators. Like I said, Bill O'Brien was a good offensive coordinator. That's why he's still coaching in college now, and Boston College was improved last year. Everywhere he goes, a lot of these teams get better. You know, people were dogging on about the Jalen Milroe thing, where he's not a quarterback. He may not be wrong about that if Jalen Milroe. So he may not have been wrong about that statement. And yeah, Mr. Optimist, this is a
Pretty
good
much,
point.
yeah.
I mean, there was a lot of guys that just weren't utilized correctly. Dalton Schultz is a guy that I think we've talked about being frustrating, but I also think you can.
I would be more concerned about Dalton Schultz now in this scheme, actually. I would be even more concerned about him staying on this roster with Nick Caley. You have to be able to block, and you have to have a multiple skill set, in my opinion. I feel like Dalton Schultz is pretty much a settle in zone and call it a day. And even from his effort, sometimes it's calling it a day before the whistle blows. And it's tough to watch, and there's more talented tight ends in it than him. It's just unfortunate that we've gotten to the situation that it's been with, with his production and his, salary cap costs. It doesn't seem right.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Scratcher.
And I think, but I will say, I think what Optimistic is getting at here, that I've kind of been getting at for a little bit, is that at some point when you ask, like, I think a better example is Cade Stover. When you ask Cade Stover to block an edge rusher over and over again, and he gets beat on it, you probably shouldn't do it anymore. It's probably just something that you should go away from. But again, that's what we talk about. Kyle Shanahan can do it because he's got Kyle Juszczyk and George Kittle. You can't do that when you don't have those guys. And Slow didn't change what he did. It was the same idea as if you had George Kittle or if you had Kyle Juszczyk. Or
this would come back to adaptability, right? This would be adapting to your personnel.
Absolutely.
Like if you inherit or assume a roster that's pretty much gridlocked into these tight ends and you're typically used to running, certain sets, then you just change what you do. I mean, so that's a challenge for him that I'm confident he can tackle. I'm glad you guys are getting on live because this is what y'all love to do. We all like to do is talk back and forth. But we've spent 30 minutes.
Absolutely.
I don't know if you want to get into the film.
Yeah, we gotta watch the
and
film.
we can still answer questions once the film
the
starts rolling as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. We can go ahead and get started on the film if y'all want. I'll go ahead and switch over there because there are some. This was probably my favorite Rams game film wise of the season, just from what I've read and stuff. Because this is a game where Cooper Kupp was hurt and Puka Nacua was hurt, and so you see them go to a lot of 12 personnel and do things that they don't normally do against a pretty good defense when they're healthy. And with the Rams, and it was really impressive what they did because they're not a team that runs a lot of 12 personnel.
And to counter that, like, unfortunately, you might see Slow say, "Oh, Nico's out, Tank's out. I'm going to roll out Jared Wayne, Mechie, and Hutchinson." When you don't need to be doing that, and that's not going to really do much.
We could have ran two back sets. If you have two decent running backs, that's a way to, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and Dameon Pierce was a guy that I know, Drew, you love Dameon Pierce. I've grown on Dameon Pierce.
And I'll admit that he's not a zone runner. Like, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Dameon Pierce is has excellent vision and patience. Like he did get better at that. He actually had a really good game running wide zone in week 18. But at the end of the day, he's a downhill thumper, a great contact balance and stuff like that. So,
but
speaking of 12 personnel, it's 12 personnel right here, huh?
Yep, here we go. No, this was some of the stuff that I just, when I'm watching and when I was reading the book that we were talking about earlier, the Bobby Peters book. This is some stuff that you can stand here. I'll go to the other angle. It might be easier to kind of see what's going on.
And just so you guys know, we got 465 live viewers. Appreciate you guys tuning in.
Thank you. Thank y'all for tuning in. If y'all got any questions or just want to add anything, go ahead and put in the comments. We'll acknowledge. We'll talk about it. But so here's a good example of kind of what they want to do in the run game. It's a lot of duo, 12 personnel. They mostly run out of 11, but in this game you're without a lot of receivers, so you go 12.
Another thing here is there was a shift, and then there was motion at the snap.
Yep.
So you got two things to kind of move the defense around, have them constantly thinking, and then guess what? All we're going to do is run right at you.
That's that motion simple. Moves the backers out of their alignments too, right? It kind of changes their gaps.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, it's constantly making those linebackers second guess. It's going to slow down their timing. Even Fred Warner, one of the best linebackers in the NFL's timing is all screwed up because of a little bit of motion. He can't trigger. He can't really shoot any gaps. He's waiting, looking for the where to go. He has the motion in his eyes
Well,
too.
all their gaps changed
it's very
responsibility too.
disruptive.
So now you have to change your thought process in a split second.
Yeah,
Let's see, is this
absolutely.
This might not be the no, this isn't the right one. I'm looking. Okay, here. Let me go back into the book. Let me find which play I'm looking for here. There, because this one is a really good example of just how well they adjust to what they have, and they use different concepts. So again, you pretty much have the exact same formation here. You get the same motion, and instead, you're going to fake it. You throw a little screen out to your receiver. First down, you get 7.
Look at that blocking.
And that's from the passing game coordinator, Nick Caley, if you will. So he has some role in there if you want to. We don't know for sure, but of course, I would assume that he comes up with some of these designs as well. And that's a great way to just have everyone's eyes moving it. Like that's another play. Just like the first one we showed, everyone's eyes are having to go somewhere else, constantly adjusting their gaps, their movement, their flow.
The screen game is something we should
slows
highlight
down
too.
everything.
I mean, that's something to be excited about. They're known this McVay offense for their screen game, and that's something that as a Texans fan we know that we lacked any creativity, execution, all that.
Right.
Yeah.
Constant basic.
Yeah, Garrett, I remember we were at the watch
nothing.
party for the Kansas City game. I mean, we're yelling no more screens, man, which is not a lot of success on those screens.
And it just kept coming.
What's frustrating about it is that Nico is probably one of the best screen players in the NFL if you can get him in space. And they struggled with it. And then this is a good concept. You get the little motion here. I kind of want to show this more so because they to close out the game, and about 9 minutes later they run a very similar concept. But they tweak it a little
Nico's
bit.
bread and butter right there.
Yep. I mean, this is one where you attack.
Yeah, I mean that's something that Stroud's gonna be able to throw with anticipation, and you're probably gonna see Nico in that alignment, like you said. And
this is one where I honestly don't remember. I think maybe the last one of the few times we saw the sprint motions where you come out and you don't really stop, you just sprint like that. I remember we did it against Jacksonville last year with the tank deep ball that got called back. I don't remember if they did it at all this year. I love that type of stuff. I think it's confusing for a defense, and I don't remember us doing it.
You give the receiver momentum too. I mean, they kind of got momentum into the route.
Yep. And then
I mean, that's something I think that like John Mechie could benefit from, having a free release constantly that could make him a little bit more comfortable. Especially, and then Nico Collins, if you want to build up speed too there. I mean, that's fun to think about.
And again, this is like a very similar concept, but it's tweaked a little bit because you get Tutu attacking the middle of the field instead of the sideline, which is where he went last time. He kind of faded off. He
might be the same play call.
He faded to the sideline.
Read the defender differently.
Yeah, I mean, it could be some type of option route.
I remember. It looks like a post kind of. Never mind. He kind of keeps it high.
I think he is running a post, but again, it's a very similar concept. You get him on the dig, and for defenders, you see, we even talked about it during the season, Drew, where we saw a lot of concepts that were used multiple times, even in the same game from Slowick, just on repeat, and it's just easy for defenses to figure out at some point. And that's
little variations.
So one thing I'll say here.
That's why.
One thing I want to say here is basically, I would say because it's in a too high shell, that it's probably going to be cover 4. You're supposed to run cover 4 or post against cover 4. As where cover 3, you can't necessarily run a post into it. So what they probably did is they probably just receivers will have keys in their routes for certain coverages. Is basically what's the play?
That's from earlier. I think you might be asking about this.
And then so based on certain coverages, hopefully in this new offense, the receivers will be able to read it out themselves and say, okay, cover 4 post. But if it's cover 3, I'm gonna run a wheel route to attack that deep third on their near sideline, and it's just kind of it manages the field,
built-in variabilities to the play, and you need intellectual players, and it's how you teach it to them. But what I noticed on that too, not only on that post, one thing that he did was he kept it high and allowed Stafford to throw him either high or back, and Stafford threw him high away from the safety. That was an underrated throw too.
Stafford's
Yeah,
awesome.
Stafford
He's a
is
super fun watch. Just
nutty.
going through the Rams film the last couple weeks, he's super fun. Like I love watching him. Just looks so effortless when he throws those type of
Who
balls.
else likes to watch Stafford play?
CJ Stroud. There you
CJ
go.
Stroud. Yep.
Yeah, and this is another game where I was watching a lot of the Minnesota game, and the Texans really struggled picking up Minnesota's blitzes. If you want to go even just the first play of the game, I want to say this is a play where Minnesota blitzes them and they pick it up. They get a little, and to add on to what
This
you all
is
were
a
talking about
defense the
earlier,
Texans got absolutely destroyed against.
if you get six
Yeah,
coming,
exactly. That's the one thing that stands out about the Rams and the Texans is the Rams dominated the Vikings and the Vikings
They had
dominated
answers
the
for
Like
these
Texans.
simulated pressures,
they dominated
nickel
the Vikings
blitzes.
twice. They beat them twice this season,
Yeah.
and the Vikings only lost 4 games this year.
If you have a
2 of them
competent
were the Rams.
coordinator to combat a Brian Flores who runs all these tricks and games, if you figured them out, you can burn them. So I mean, that's what happened with the Rams.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, Flores plays a really risky
Absolutely.
defense because, if you want to know the truth, the Vikings secondary is not very good. That's why he does what he does, because they can't
not at
sit
all.
back and cover for this long. And one of the issues that I had with Bobby Sloak is red zone offense. They sucked in the red zone. The concepts were bad. Everything was bad. This is pretty fun. I don't know if y'all have seen this.
This was one of the best play calls in the red zone I had seen all year. You usually have a leak from a tight end, yet here they're going to do a boot leak to the running back.
And I will say, from what I had heard,
run it back. Let Drew break that down.
That this was actually a play that, from what I had heard, Kyron Williams did this on his own. It wasn't a play call necessarily. But again, to add kind of what you're talking about, the offensive freedom is something the Texans lack.
Yeah,
like
allow a player to use their brain.
Stuck in kind of what they had to do, and Stroud couldn't adjust protection. That's not what you see in this offense. If you can go make a play, go make a play. And like you said,
I hate to say it again, adaptability is the key word there. You allow the player to adapt the route.
Honestly, I think the players are going to love stuff like this, especially Joe Mixon, like the freedom to just kind of like operate around in the field. Like he's going to love stuff like that.
Yes, it's super fun. I mean, this is so that's super fun stuff. Like, I'm if Nick Caley had any impact on that, then we should be feeling pretty good about that.
Yes, you are allowed to throw to the running back. Fortunately, you can. I get it now.
At the very least, Caley was involved in this offense. I mean, it's like he's seen he's seen a much better offense than. And the thing about Shanahan's offense is it's great, but like it depends on like elite O-line play and tight end play, which really any offense would thrive with that environment. So it's
exactly. And one of the things that I posted a thread about this game when I'm watching after the Caley hire, and the tight ends made plays in this game. I mean, this is a really good throw too. But
a dagger,
and this is the blitz from Minnesota. You can see how the line picks it up. I guess five on
5, yeah.
5 on 5.
One thing there is you can tell Nakua, like, just if you pause it right when Nakua breaks down, he literally breaks down like it's like a triangle. We talked about this a couple of times before, Jacob, but you can basically make a triangle, and like he would be sitting right in the middle of the triangle because he broke it. It's called the apex, like the perfect spot in the zone. Like Nakua did such a great job of just finding that apex and breaking it down, and Stafford was on the same page with that too.
That's Robinson. I
think that Stroud and Nico have a great connection like that too.
Yeah.
I think that Stroud is similar. Velocity on his throws in the middle, in the intermediate area as well. So I think some people can hate on curl routes and the Hank concept, but I think if you have smart, intelligent players, and if you have a good quarterback that can throw with anticipation and velocity, stuff like this, you're going to see a lot more
for
of.
sure. And
look at what he had underneath
that
too.
That is
look at the
mesh
concept.
You also have the underneath routes. You're gonna have a delay route from the tight end. You're gonna have a chip from Nakua. You're gonna have an outlet from the running back. Those are 3 extra options that sometimes the Texans didn't have with Bobby Slowick. So that looks good to me.
Absolutely. And if you want to go off of, I did check because I was curious about where the tight ends for Caley graded out in this game. The highest graded Ram in this game was Tyler Higbee. So Caley's tight ends, we're not doing too shabby here.
Higbee's underrated.
There you go.
Yeah, he could be at a down year, but
I
at the
think he
same
was hurt
time,
for a
like
lot of the year, unless I'm
he's still a
wrong.
great player. Yeah, he also is. He's
But
also a
this is
great
stuff
player.
where this is stuff that Brevin
Always
Jordan
like
can kind of thrive on. It's pretty much what similar concept to what happened for the touchdown. You kind of just get this
Y'all
little
see that
release
with
yeah,
Puka?
it's literally just
flat.
a
You
delay
motion
I did
route.
you
not.
motion
He's
Puka
it's
into the
man
box like
miss.
in the H slot, and then he releases through the C gap. That's one thing. I don't know if he's in
Oh
the
yeah,
C
yeah,
gap or not.
because I actually gotta find an example of it. I think there is one, but the reason they do that
They
is
also run
because
insert
these
duo. If
slots
you've seen, yeah,
for the Rams will come in here and block nickels. They will insert them in
yeah,
the middle of a formation and have them go block a nickel.
It looks like
Um,
there he had the freedom to release to the left or to the right of the
yeah,
tackle, and he just
yeah, I think
so
it's some sort
basically
of kind of
again to
option.
Drew's point earlier, you motioned a guy to get the guy a free release. I mean, it helps get guys get off the line of scrimmage.
yeah.
But yeah, when you get a chance
Yeah, let me
too,
see
that's
if
the
I
one
can
thing that I'm really
find
intrigued about this
an
offense is
example.
we didn't see it where they motion them in like on a jet motion, but then they kind of settle and they release to that C gap where they block backers too, not just nickels, and then
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
They will
they'll
block.
insert them in the C gap, and they might go block them, and then the next time they're going to come in, they're going to run play action, and they're going to run a corner route. They're going to run a flood sail concept with your receivers inserting through the C gap. They'll
it's literally on
insert
the
their
cover of the
running
Bob
backs
Peters
through the
book.
C gap. Yeah, it's right. Yeah, literally right there. Look at that.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
here, this is a good example
creative
of what I'm trying to find the play. There it is. This is a good example of the insert that they will use um for receivers. And this is why kind of Jack Beck's been getting talked
stuff.
about. Having these guys that so here comes Puka. Boom, he's gonna insert. He's playing, yeah,
Yes.
there you go. He's on a linebacker. Um,
Yeah,
and they don't even really go his way, it kind of goes the other way, but it's just the idea of
right.
having these receivers that are very physical and
They're
are
really just protecting, like, for example, like a lot of the times when a guy chases down someone backside, well, they're just protecting the backside because there's really athletic linebackers and ends, even though I'm scouting right now at the college level, that are just absolutely monsters when they're unblocked and trying to play the run. They will get you. They will simply chase you down, and so that just completely protects your backside, and you have the freedom to follow your blockers and let
So
gaps
it may not
develop
even
and
be
kind of
like
see what
necessarily
happens.
blocking the guy, but at least getting a hand on or affecting the guy to hesitate. Like you're not
Yeah.
asking them just to maul this guy to make the play work, right?
No. No.
yeah.
Yeah, just kind of get hands on him and disrupt his
Well, that's
timing.
good to hear
Yeah, so
because
here's
like I discovered this and it kind of John Crumpler when I had him on my show kind of brought this up as a point to we're trying to figure out which receiver we're going to get for our slot. You see someone like Puka. I mean, I think he plays their X, but like he is motioning inside the box a lot. You're like it kind of changes like what you're
Yeah.
thinking now, the type of receiver. But and like to your point, Drew, like maybe they're not this big mauler. Maybe Stephon Diggs can do this role that we're looking at right now.
Yeah, just really someone who's a fluid mover and someone that can just kind of be coachable and do the little things. I think Stephon Diggs at his age would probably be okay with doing stuff like that. But at the same time, I mean, you might see like just Hutchinson go in there and get a little contact. It's a bigger body guy like Hutchinson has the size to do it. Nico might want to do that stuff too to be in that Nakua role. So we'll
That
see. It
could
can really
be
be
yeah,
that's the
anything.
and
exciting
this is
thing is
another
like now
example.
Hutchinson could be revitalized, like guys that we were like
Yeah,
low on could all
yeah,
of a
yeah.
sudden be better in this scheme.
Yeah, and I think John Mechie, he's not necessarily a bigger guy, but he is, he has the quickness, and we've seen him have pretty good. He's a pretty good blocker, for a receiver. So
Yeah, we've seen the clip again, him blocking TJ Watt or whatever it
yep,
was back in the day. Like he's done it before. I mean, yeah, and then Jack Beck could be a great option because his size, he's a tough player, good blocker, does the little things, and just kind of see
yep.
what
And then this is
happens
another
there.
example. So you get, I think that's Cooper Cup, if I'm not wrong, but he kind of inserts. It is,
Yes.
and he inserts. He gets the nickel. It's just kind of a seal. Again, they're not really running him play side, but you just seal block him. Don't, like you said, don't leave him unblocked.
Yeah, you don't want to. You want to make sure that 21 cannot swoop in there and just kind of grab at the ankles and get it to maybe even the tackle for like Jalen Petrie might shoot in a gap like that and make a big play, but they're not going to let 21 do that.
Absolutely, and I know Philly. Philly was a team, yesterday that just absolutely game wrecked. Uh, and this team played Philly in the playoffs, in a
Yep.
really bad weather game. Not exactly the
And they
situation you want
had a chance
offensively.
to win with like the last play of the game, dude.
Yep.
Right.
And they matched up
Without a
well
doubt.
because I will say I don't think this team is the most talented team. The Rams. When you watch them, I think they got a really good quarterback. I think they got some good receivers. Their line is really young. They're a very young football team as a whole. But they do a lot of things well coaching wise. McVay. And there you go.
There it
There's
is.
the same insert with
Woo!
Nakua.
No way he went up and got that. Oh, this is in the playoff game.
Demarcus
I
Robinson
don't
making
think
some
we should
plays. There
necessarily
you go.
draft a tight
Free agent
end.
target for the Texans, possibly.
Yeah.
He could have hit Puka
There you go.
too. He had his pick of the.
Yeah, Puka,
Absolutely.
you get the
Probably
insert
should've
up the
hit
C
there,
gap.
but,
That's D-Rob,
Puka
right,
is
on the
open.
post.
Yep.
Yeah.
High point the ball. That's awesome. In the snow.
No, I know people have talked about him as a potential free agent target, and I think you're seeing why when you watch some of this film because he's making some plays.
I would guess at least one person familiar with the system has to come across just from someone that he can trust and then also help other guys learn the playbook.
Yeah, I mean, for all we know, it could be a backup offensive lineman, just someone to help with the continuity.
Imagine Joe Mixon or Pierce in this downhill running right here.
Tight end. I mean, he's got Jordan Davis, and he just seals him completely.
Didn't get touched till like 8-9 yards on the field. What's going on?
No, it's beautiful.
Yeah, look at that.
And this is actually a good example of what a lot of teams do now, and why the Texans do it too. Where a lot of times the DTs get upfield a little bit too fast.
That's a wham right there. The tight ends with the wham block on the nose tackle, and that's a play that when we finally freaking ran these plays, Dameon Pierce thrived in this. I think his big play against the Patriots was a wham. This is something that has killed us on our defense with our D line. It's a good way to counter like an aggressive D line who gets too far upfield. It's almost like a screen.
Yeah, and a lot of the lines do play like this. Like I said, the Texans are one of them that absolutely play like this. When you watch, the defensive tackles, what's funny is they grade out so poorly every week because they do this stuff. They are upfield as quick as possible.
But that's
they're
their
not
job.
Really looking to fill gaps. They're looking to just shoot in the backfield.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's the timing. People make jokes about, I don't know if the Texans could pull this play off. Man, that's a fair statement to make because everything just looks so crisp and clean. But I trust that with coaching, really, they're NFL players. They're going to be able to go out there and perform. So I don't think it's more,
wow, that's
coaching
awesome. That Higbee on a little curl or a
zig
route motion. Oh yeah, a little whip or return.
Yeah.
It wasn't even a very convincing route either.
Yeah.
It was more just kind of like using the body. And maybe that is something that Dalton Schultz could do. He might be able to box the defender out there and hopefully make the tough catch. But it's the creativity for me that I like. And, we got Robinson also occupying that space to really give, Higbee kind of the one-on-one for just a split second there.
Yep. Nice stuff there.
Crazy. Rams really could have won this game, bro. And to your point, Jacob, they're not the most talented.
Yeah, we can go to the fourth. Jalen Carter kind of game wrecked them. If it wasn't for that guy, they would have won, I think. Right? It
should have been a blowout. They had a bunch of turnovers. They just couldn't turn them into touchdowns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a weird game. The snow and everything affected it. But yeah, that right guard was just getting his ass kicked. He false started. And then they got back to 3rd and 2. And he gets sacked.
Oh, shit. This is sick.
Oh, it just didn't. Don't watch that if you want to see improved pass protection because that looks like the Texans last year. But granted, this is just kind of a whiff from the center.
Yeah, kind of confusing that he's even doing that in the first place. Doing that, he's going to help the guard.
Was this the last play of the game?
I mean.
No, this was a 3rd and 2 because they ran one more play after this.
Gotcha.
But man,
pretty much the game though.
If he had any time, Higbee's wide open over the middle.
On that same little whip return
His defender
route.
fell slipped in the and then they ran, I think, this one. Carter gets pressure again.
We got
like we talked about, like the Rams are one of the teams in the league that the last couple of years has consistently played over their talent level. On offense and defense, which doesn't really matter for us, but there's a lot to like about what you've seen offensively. And, they got some big plays that mixed in here with Puka. There you go.
Jacob, so do you guys upload this podcast to Apple and Spotify or?
We don't, we just do YouTube for right now.
Okay. Well, go ahead and shout all your stuff out when there's dead air so people know.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Wow.
Me too. The snow is pretty cool, but it kind of makes it hard to see almost. It's kind of, but here I'll pull up let me pull up the YouTube actually.
That's just Puka making a play.
There you go. Here, I'll get the YouTube. I'll go. Let me go on here.
Inception.
Okay.
Oh, what am I doing?
Clutch.
Did we lose Drew or no?
I don't know. He might have. Did he get maybe his Wi-Fi?
Yeah, it must have been. I don't see him.
May have
on
had a
there,
Wi-Fi thing, or may have had to head out. I'm not 100% sure. He may have. Let's see. Did he text me anything? Okay, yeah. He said his connection went out, so he's working on getting back.
Right.
So here's our YouTube for anyone that is enjoying. Me and Drew. I don't want to hear the ad. All right. Our YouTube. We come on here. We just talk about Texans weekly. I guess not weekly anymore because season's over, but every week after games we'd come on, we'd review film. If you like, talking just film, watching film, it's definitely something that I think y'all would like because we do go not super in depth. We don't go to a point where people would understand it, but it's something that I think people would like. It's pretty fun. We enjoy doing it. We just kind of talk for an hour and a half. Not a whole lot of editing. Just kind of straight talking football. Do you want to go through some comments while we wait for Drew to get back? Maybe.
Yeah, and there's not too much that we haven't addressed. I mean, I'll just shout out
Yep.
Mr. Optimistic, Kai Sanat,
Yep.
not the original Kai Sanat, but Kai Sanat on Twitter. Who else has commented that I can give a shout out to? Let's see.
That might be.
Shout out Darian Miller. Shout out
Yep.
Creflo Dollars. Shout out Brandon Hallman or Halam. I don't even know how to pronounce your last name, but I see you on all the videos. Appreciate you, Brandon. But yeah, if y'all got any questions while we're kind of running through this, just let us know. Shout out Beltway Boys. I think someone earlier kind of asked thoughts on the first round, draft. I don't know where you're at on that,
Okay.
Jacob.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. What do you you want to go ahead and start with this? What are you thinking for first round?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously it's tough, pre-free agency, we have quite a few holes. I think, you and I and most others would agree that receiver is a position to address. We need two receivers with Tank Dell basically expected to miss most of the year, and then Stephon Diggs as of now, a free agent. And then obviously interior O-line is a pretty big need, specifically right guard. And then interior D-line, I believe, is also a need. But I would probably say, I would assume they're going to sign at least one guy in free agency at receiver and then maybe get a guy at interior O-line. But I can't, it's hard to give a definite answer, but like based off of now, just from the whole standpoint, since we need two receivers, I would lean receiver in the first. But I would be very happy with an interior lineman depending on who's available. And I also should say too, I'm not convinced that we're going to stay at that spot. I bet we see something like last year where Caserio trades back and gets an extra second round pick. But I would say probably receiver, interior line. But yeah, what are your thoughts?
So my favorite player, if we were picking at 25, I like Tyler Booker. I think he's a good fit. I think he's a very good fit in a duo scheme. Welcome back, Drew. You made it back.
All right, jeez. I don't know what happened, guys.
We're just talking about maybe what we're thinking for pick 25, what we're thinking for the Texans in the draft. And I think, I think, Drew, we talked about this the other day. Tyler Booker is a really good fit with what the Texans are going to kind of transition towards. He's pretty sound in pass protection. He's able to, he's a very physical downhill lineman. He's not super quick compared to some of these other linemen. Zabel's more of the mobile, athletic, and get out in space. Booker straight up, with the duo and stuff like that. He's very physical at the point of attack, and the Texans kind of need that. He can slide in immediately and be the left guard for this team. I think he's pretty pro ready. And like you said, I like Matthew Golden. If you went the receiver route, I think Golden's a very good player. I like the run after catch. He's very versatile, can play kind of inside outside. But I'm on the side. I think trading back is probably the best option as of right now. If you could trade back into maybe kind of the late 30s, early 40s, kind of similar to where the Texans were last year, because I like a lot of these guys day two. I like Tate Ratledge a lot as a guard. I know Jack Beck's been talked about a lot. I like Jalen Royals a lot. I like Andrew Makuba, the safety from Texas. I think he's a very good player. And you want to go defensive tackle. I know, Drew, you're big on Darius Alexander from Toledo. I haven't watched a lot of him yet, but I know defensive tackle is a spot that people need. And if you want to go defensive tackle at 25, you can look at a guy like Walter Nolan, who I think is a very good player. Really liked him at A&M, and he transferred, unfortunately. But I did like him when he was there. I liked, I know Kenneth Grant's been a guy that I've seen mock to them a little bit. There's a lot of options because, like you said, free agency, they have enough money to kind of address some of these positions. And Mr. Optimistic in chat brought up a good point about how Robinson or Atwell will probably be on the Texans. I would tend to agree with that statement. And if you get a guy like DeMarcus Robinson as kind of your third receiver, and you add a Diggs or maybe a Devontae Adams, who I know is out there now, or a Cooper Kupp, you're not necessarily looking. You kind of want a long-term receiver, but you're not necessarily in the spot where you have to take a receiver in that first or second round. You kind of wait and take one of these, like Kyle Williams. I know is a guy that people have liked as a fit for the Texans. I haven't got to watch him yet. I do need to do that. But I got told the other day about somebody that I respect a lot. I know he watched a lot of film. He's like not Darius Alexander. Kyle Williams is a great fit for the Texans. Could be a good separator.
He would be a good Z receiver to fill in for Tank Dell's role.
Yeah. And, I talked about it last night. I think I tweeted it. Like, the Texans, if they could get a guy, just a speed guy, they kind of need that. The guy that has good speed, just don't have Nico be this guy that has to he has to do kind of everything. He's got to be the guy who extends the field. He has to be this guy in the middle of the field. Let some other guy be the guy that kind of extends the defense, makes there be a threat of the deep ball. Because we didn't see a lot of deep balls this year, partly because the protection didn't hold up. But
I think when Caley, looks at the roster, I think he'll understand that there's really not a deep threat on the team. I think Nico Collins obviously can do it, but how often are you going to run your receiver straight down the field in a straight line every single time? So I think he'll kind of understand that you need to add some pure speed. We know that's not Mechie. We know it's not Hutchinson. We know that Tank Dell is not going to be an option for that. We know Stephon Diggs wouldn't be an option for that if he was here. So definitely going to have to address that. And then in terms of the first round, I am very concerned about the offensive line. But for me, it's going to just have to be, unfortunately, sit and wait because you have to see who's there on the board. So if maybe Zabel is gone or Booker is gone, then I would take the other. If both are gone, definitely trade back. If both are there, I would consider trading back. It just gets really, really tricky. I haven't looked too much into the offensive line free agency class, but for me, right now, I would say put Titus Howard at guard and put Blake Fisher at tackle. And then you just have one more spot to fill if you put Jarrett Patterson at center. And then you could potentially fill that with I'm sorry, Shaq Mason, but I believe that you're up to NFL starter talent right now.
He's gone.
I think he's gone. But I think Booker is absolutely pro ready. But Zabel is a tackle that people believe is.
Is that how you pronounce his name, Zabel? I've been saying Zabel in my head the whole time.
Maybe.
I have too.
Maybe Zabel, Zabel.
Zabel, like Sable. You know who Sable is? The old
yeah.
WWE women's wrestler.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I've been
do some research on her.
Zabel the whole time.
Yeah.
But I would say I would also say that Ratledge, because it is Ratledge.
I think it's Ratledge.
Ratledge. Yeah, I think that he is also very pro ready. I think that Joshua Gray from Oregon State who is a tackle that played guard his last year. Oregon State, he's also very pro ready. So yeah, I think I would like to trade back, get one free agent offensive lineman, and get one rookie offensive lineman as well, and kind of go from there. But I think trading back would be the best option at this point because I love the receiver class. Even though people I understand like what they say when it's a weaker receiver class, at the same time, like I keep scouting these other guys. It's like, okay, he can start, he can be productive, he has potential. Blah, blah, like all these guys just look really good, and then the interior defensive line still looks pretty good there. Like there is talent in this draft. In that clump or cluster, I don't remember what Caserio really calls it.
Clusters.
Something like that. Cluster. I think there's a really nice cluster that he's gonna like and what to trade back into. And frankly, I would do the same exact thing.
Well, one thing to think about too is like the most stacked positions. You have D line is absolutely stacked, tight end is stacked, and running back is stacked. So, unless you have, an absolute game changer fall to you in the first round at, D line, you probably don't do that. And you kind of think about doing that later. And we're talking about receiver too. I mean, my opinion on receivers is I don't want to say they're dime a dozen, but like you have like your handful of guys that are just like freaks and unicorns. And then to me, in my opinion, like after that, like they're all
100%.
freaking good. They're all good. And we've seen
Yeah.
with CJ Stroud, like his ability to elevate guys in their play in his rookie year, guys that were kind of afterthoughts all of a sudden become better. He can definitely elevate play there. And then you just look back to Nick Caserio's track record. Look at Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs. We got both guys in the third round. I mean, so that's stuff you have to kind of keep in the back of your mind as well.
Yeah, and when I look at the receivers, I hate to like compare to current NFL players, which is kind of weird, when it's college NFL. But it's like, okay, do I think you can be more productive than John Mechie? Do I think you run routes better than Xavier Hutchinson? Do you have better physical tools? So like when I watch Trey Harris, I'm like, okay, he just moves a little bit differently than these guys. I'm like, I can see the potential there. When I look at Jalen Royals, he's a quick guy. It's fun to watch. Jack Beck, he's a consistent separator. He does the little things that I like, and so I can go on and on about but I'll save that for later, and we'll dive into more draft stuff, and me and Jacob will go over film, and that'll be fun. But look, I really think there's a lot of depth in this class, and I think there's a lot of productive players.
Yeah, and I think this receiver class, I think people are kind of comparing it to last year where you had these guys at the top end of the draft that were can't miss type prospects with Neighbors and a Dunze and who maybe hasn't been crazy good, but Harrison, who is considered maybe one of the best receiver prospects we've seen in forever. And you don't necessarily have that this year. Like Tate McMillan or Tet McMillan is cool. Like, he's a good player. I like Burton, but there's not like a top tier receiver. It's just a very deep receiver class. There's a lot of guys. You could go 20 deep at receiver, and they're all quality players. That's another point where that's why trading back is a realistic option that makes a lot of sense because it's a very deep class. For most positions, there's a lot of good guards that could fall. Tate Rowledge is a guy that's probably a day 2 pick, and I think he's maybe he doesn't have the upside of a guy like Booker, but he's a very consistent player, and he's going to be probably a good player in the NFL. And there's just a lot of depth, and there's a lot of depth at the D line, like Garrett talked about. Interior D line is probably a spot that you do want to go at some point in this draft because, I think the room exceeded expectations, but it's still a very old room, and there's a lot of free agents from that. I know Foley is a free agent, and I want to say Edwards is also a free agent. I think we talked about that. But you're going to have to at some point get younger in that room, and it's probably a good time to do it because there's a lot of options in this draft.
Another thing to keep in mind too is like some of my thought processes is, I talked about how Caserio can get good receivers late. I mean, look at D'Amico Ryans on the defensive side of the ball, like what he's been able to do with, Dre Greenlaw, Fred Warner, Henry Toa, like the list goes on. Guys, 3rd, 5th, 6th round. Blake Cashman. They can find these guys that are nobodies. I mean, look at the D line. The guys you just mentioned: Mario Edwards, Tim Settle, Foley Fatukasi. These guys are afterthoughts. They come into our scheme under better coaching that fits their abilities, and now they're having career years. So with that mindset too, I would tend to prefer to use most of the early draft capital on the offensive side of the ball. And it works out because they struggled last year. So that's got to be exciting for Nick Caley. And then kind of to our point about trading back, Nick Caserio and D'Amico Ryans seem to kind of like that mindset. I know last year, like during the winter meetings after the season, D'Amico Ryans, I think he talked about the trade. He said that's the sweet part of the draft, the early to middle part of the second round. So I think they both like that. And I wouldn't be surprised if they do something very similar to last year, which was they traded away a second to get a veteran slot receiver and then got that second back by trading back their pick. Or I forget the order, the way it went down. But, I mean, they could very much do that again for Cooper Kupp, trade a pick and then recoup that pick by trading back. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they did something similar.
Yeah, and I think they got a first-round talent with Kamari Lassiter, had a first-round grade on him. But at the same time, you're right. You hit it on the nail. They can do so much with so little on defense, and they also already have the pieces in place on defense too. So Defensive line, you might be a little bit concerned of bringing in other guys. I mean, I think that, Folu can get paid, Mario Evers can get paid, but you're still going to have Tim Settle, so I feel good about that. I just don't think they're going to get Walter Nolan. Like, I'm sorry, guys. Like, I know you guys want Walter, and we're going to see mock drafts about that too. Like, whatever, and other guys there. And Darius Alexander's stock is only going to keep rising, unfortunately, for me and others. So I'm just not so sure they're gonna, get that defensive guy early. I think it's gonna be offense. If it's defense, then hey, you got a stud on defense and a great defensive scheme. So really, it's a good situation to be in. Just gotta hope that they have a plan for offensive line or a plan for receiver if they aren't getting these guys early. When I fully expect they will.
Absolutely, and Swarm Merchant, you bring up Quentin Johnston. I will say, I like Quentin Johnston when he's a prospect. So I had a hard time. I was watching Savion Williams today, and I'm like, this is the same player. This is the exact same guy.
Savion Williams is who Quentin Johnson wishes he was. In my opinion,
I want to like Savion. I really do. And I watch him. I'm reminded of Quentin Johnston. I can't like this guy. I can't do it. He's too similar. I got PTSD from the first time where I talked about Quentin Johnston.
But you also have to think how he would fit in our offense. Like, he's a bigger, slower, bigger body, slower possession receiver. Could he do better in these roles where he's asked to, go into the box and whatnot,
Yeah. The drops are just concerning with Savion, which is unfortunate. I do like him as a prospect, though. I would not be mad if we took him. I just, I have a hard time being really high on him because I was really high on Johnston, and that didn't work out. So
yeah, at the same time, I will say this for anyone that likes to watch film and all that: try to focus on what they can do and instead of what they can't do. At the end of the day, it's on these NFL coaches to maximize their talents. And so when you see a unicorn, it's unfortunate that some of them don't work out because sometimes the coaching sucks. Sometimes the scheme wasn't right for that player. But at the end of the day, hopefully the coaches and the general manager focuses on what they can do. And if player can do a lot, or if he can do something really good or has an elite trait, if you will, then they deserve all the attention. They deserve their stock.
And, the Texans have done a really good job with that.
Yep. That's my biggest thing, and D'Amico talks about it a lot, is putting players in their best position to succeed. And he did that on the defensive side of the ball. Like Jalen Petrie is a prime example. Was playing high safety, and he wasn't a good high safety, so they moved him to star, a position where he's better suited. And now he's having like a Pro Bowl level year until he gets hurt. So that's something I think is a great point, Drew.
Yeah, absolutely. That was the one thing about Jalen Petrie, man. I couldn't believe that he was playing high safety after all the plays he made his rookie year, and then D'Amico, I kind of got him back to what he was doing good at, and I cannot emphasize how important it is to do that for players. And hopefully that now we see this on the offensive side to kind of wrap things up there. We want to see our offensive players be maximized using their best traits.
Absolutely, and Drew, we've talked about. Man, I forgot what I was going to say. It'll come back to me. I blanked on what I was going to say. I had something in mind, and then it blanked on me. Let me think.
Hot take.
Oh shucks.
No, it was something. It was something about the draft. Okay, I remember what I was going to say. So, and if you don't necessarily, when you're trading out of the first, if you don't necessarily value that fifth-year option, you can get really good value out of that spot. Because teams will come up to just get a fifth-year option on a player. Like that's something that they'll move up 2 spots and give up pretty good value because having the fifth-year option is very valuable on a player. So if you're, if the Texans are at 25, they could probably move to 35 and get really good value on like whatever they do, the trade calculator, like the values. They could get really, really good value on that pick by moving down 10 spots for a team that doesn't necessarily need the fifth-year option with where they are. You're trying to win. So if you get a guy that you had a first-round grade on at 35 and pick up a third or a fourth or something like that, absolutely would be worth it.
That's a great point. And off of that, too, it goes back to Drew's point with Caserio and these clusters. I mean, it all depends on how the draft goes. Like if they have these guys that they have these grades on and there's enough of them left when it's your time to pick, then that's when you trade back because you can still get a guy that you would have taken at 25, at 30, whatever, So that's all part of it, too. It's a cliche thing, but it kind of depends on how the board falls.
Oh, absolutely, yeah,
It
and
really
that's
does.
why last year I think people were frustrated when they traded out before the draft because you do want to see how it falls, and it ended up being okay because they ended up with Stephon Diggs. But this year, if you're not going to make a move like that, if you're just going to go get if you wanted like Cooper Cup, you could probably get him for a fifth or a sixth. It'd be a day 3 pick, in my opinion. Um, so I think you just stay. I think you stay at 25 till the draft, and see how the board falls. If Tyler Booker or one of those guys is there, then maybe you take them. If not, then you trade back and you add some more assets.
Yeah, I mean, Swarm Merchant, I don't necessarily agree with that because of the talent that the Texans already have on their roster, and that as long as they have trust in their coaching staff, this shouldn't really necessarily be a concern. And also, it's not a weak class, and I'm also not advocating for the Texans to draft Savion. So really, it's about trying to not overthink it. Sometimes I think that's what kind of happens in the media and with fans. And at the end of the day, most teams should have plans for players.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And I think, and honestly, like, I don't think any of us would take Savion Williams in the first round. Maybe second. I think, like you're saying, second round is reasonable for him. But the only receivers that I really consider at 25 would be Burton if he fell, or Abuka or Golden. Like, it's those three
Yep.
guys. And if it's not those three guys, then I don't want him at 25 for a receiver.
And it depends
So,
on what we do in free agency, in my opinion. If we re-sign Stephon Diggs, or if we get Cooper Cup, or if we get Keenan Allen, if we get a slot receiver, then we need the guy to replace Tank, so that's, or vice versa. If we get someone to replace Tank, then we draft a slot. So, and I think there's an important deadline coming up with Stephon Diggs, February 17th. It's basically when the void year expires. So the Texans, to me, it makes sense for us to re-sign Stephon Diggs. Right now, his dead cap hit was projected to be roughly $17 million. So basically, if we don't re-sign him, it's going to cost us $17 million towards our cap. But if we do re-sign him, we can now restructure that $17 million due and defer it into later years with more void years. And Texans cap does great work. He projected that we could potentially have a $9 million cap hit, which would be saving us $7 million from the roughly 16, 17 million. So basically, the two options are re-sign Diggs and save $7 million roughly of cap this year, or don't and lose and have 16 to 17 million go wasted. So that will be very telling as far as this Nick Caley era.
If they don't sign Stephon Diggs by the 16th, you could probably say he's not coming back. I think you can kind of fairly confidently say that he, and I wouldn't have an issue with that necessarily. I think Diggs is a better player than a guy like Cup, but I do think fit matters in an offense. If Caley really believes that Cup is a better fit in the offense, then I'm cool with that. But I would personally, I think there was a comment really early on about it. I personally would bring back Stephon Diggs. 1-2 year deal, maybe worth kind of 12 a year in that range. That's kind of what I would target for him. I think that's fair money, and I think he was a very productive player last year for the Texans before his injury. Drew, I know you got to head out here in a second. So, and I know Stressans, you got to head out here in a second as well. So, I had a fun time. We appreciate all y'all for tuning in on the live, and then if y'all are going to see this on YouTube, we appreciate y'all for watching, of course. Plenty of offseason stuff to be excited about with free agency and the draft coming soon. I think free agency is legit a month away today. I saw a tweet, I think. So obviously we're going to kind of get into that as we get closer, maybe kind of talk about some free agent targets for the Texans. I have some in mind, but I know, Drew, you haven't really looked at the free agency class yet, so we'll get caught up on that.
I know, I'm a little draft nerd right now. I'm nerding out, scouting prospects every day, but I will look.
Well, it works out. I know more about free agency than you got the draft, so it ends up working out for us.
There we go.
But we appreciate y'all for tuning in. Hopefully, we're going to kind of do some more of these live. This is pretty fun. Thank you, Stressans, for showing us about this, because we had no idea about this.
Yeah, man, I was surprised when you sent me a Google Meets link. I was like, bro, you got to go live, man. We got 922 people watching right now. I mean,
yeah, it's awesome. So yeah, we'll definitely have to tune in. We'll definitely have to do some more of this. Stressans, definitely have to get you back on at some point. We'll talk some more, probably after free agency. We were talking about it today with the trade back stuff. We'll kind of have a better idea of what maybe the Texans want to do. So that could be fun for sure. And we appreciate y'all for tuning in, and we will see y'all next time.
See ya.